welcome to the first ever Salt podcast. It's been something we've been wanting to do for quite a while, and like many things, it gets kicked down the path.
Yeah.
But you coming over, the collaboration that we've got planned, and obviously the story that we've got to tell, I think it's the perfect episode. So episode 1, the final straw, here we are.
This is it. I mean, first of all, what a pleasure it is to be your first guest.
Yeah.
On what is going to be the best podcast in the entire brewing industry, I'm sure, in no time whatsoever.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I bloody hope so. We'll see. We'll freestyle it. We've had a good day.
Yeah.
Shot various other videos. Just had some lunch. So yeah, I think look, a good starting point is, I'm Ned, Managing Director of Salt.
Yeah.
Make beer, sell beer, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, who are you? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Tom Peacock-Nazil. I'm the founder and CEO of a sustainability organisation focused on ocean plastic pollution. I currently live out in Bali with the team.
Yeah, very jealous.
Yeah, well, I brought the sun with me today.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad. But back here in the UK for a few things, bit of business, bit of pleasure, and really grateful to get the opportunity to come down to Salt Beer Factory today in this wonderful town and really try some new beers, try the beer that we're going to be launching together, eat some of the food, and the chicken wings were
very
bang
good.
On. And yeah, just thank you for having us. And like I said, I'm the first on the podcast, so feeling blessed.
Yeah, this is it. This is going to be the podcast sofa.
Yeah,
I hope. So and localish, I guess, right?
Yeah, local. So I'm a Huddersfield lad, born and raised in Huddersfield until a very wintry, cold 2013 February came along, and I got headhunted to go to tropical Singapore, and it was a very quick decision.
So we've been kind of speaking now for I don't know how long, months, if not a year, that kind of thing, about a collaboration, about doing something together. As you mentioned, you're now based in Bali, so we jump on these Zoom calls, always extremely jealous. But yeah, so we've worked together to create an amazing beer, what we're calling an ocean-saving pale ale.
Yeah.
So I guess a good starting point is let's talk about 7 Clean Seas, because I think the podcast is the perfect medium, however you want to term it, to talk through your story and what you guys do, because genuinely I find it fascinating, amazing. So yeah, if you had to give us that kind of top line, what is 7 Clean Seas?
Yeah. No. I mean, look, fair enough. I moved out to Singapore to tropical climes in 2013, but it wasn't until 2018 that my wife and I were on this beautiful beach in Thailand, in the South Andaman Sea, on an island called Koh Lipe, and we really were shocked into action. You know, we were on this one beach enjoying it, having a few beers, as you do when you're on holiday, in this tropical paradise. There's no other way to put it. And we went back the next day because we were that impressed with it. And the beach was just completely covered in plastic pollution. It was like, I mean, if it was a horror movie, it would have been just plastic themed. It was a nightmare. It was one of those moments in life where you really take a step back and you just take a moment and you sit there and you just try and consider, like, kind of like how. Don't know whether I'm allowed to swear, but like, how the fuck did we get here?
We're allowed to swear.
Okay, cool.
I hope so.
I hope so. So like, yeah, genuinely, like, how the fuck did humanity make this so bad? And we decided, look, whilst we're both in finance, we're not environmentalists, we're not heavily involved in the sustainability world, we're completely normal people. We want to go back to Singapore and just make a difference. And if that is through the format of doing beach cleanups and getting people involved in those beach cleanups as an educational experience, then it's a great way to start. Now, it wasn't long before we started, reading all the scientific literature out there and starting to become knowledgeable on the subject, that we realized that the issue is just gargantuan. If we wanted to really, make our efforts count, we needed to think of scale. Like, how do we produce impact, positive environmental impact at scale? And that kind of led us to where we are today, where we're building projects and, getting the opportunity to partner with great brands and organizations like yourself to help us on our journey, which is essentially to find a way to rid the world's oceans of plastic pollution.
Yeah, I think that's been particularly interesting from, I guess, my perspective, and probably from us as a brand, is I think a lot of the time in the UK for sure, we don't see this impact. So I think your kind of, I guess, origin story of actually seeing how big of a problem this is, like, and that being the catalyst that spurred you to completely, go off on a different kind of challenge in life is awesome. And then that's what I've enjoyed through our conversations is learning about the problem and almost shocked by the extent of the problem. And I think that's hopefully one of the good things that comes out of our collaboration is that we can bring that message to a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
I think we're fortunate in this country where we do have things like, we've got a recycling bin and we will delve into that kind of thing anyway. Mm-hmm. But we don't see the impact of problems like plastic pollution.
At all. I think it's an interesting point now here in the UK, group here, I am still a UK citizen and always will be. We're very fortunate that we have we've got a good economic environment. We've got high levels of waste management and recycling infrastructure. But even here, like, a lot of the plastic we're using isn't going to be recycled. Even if you put it in the bin, it's going to end up in a landfill. It might be incinerated for power, or what we see a lot of the time is the recyclables are aggregated and sent to some country over the horizon, where we just assume it's recycled, and from a country perspective, we see that ton of plastic that left on a boat, we tick it off as recycled. When the reality is, maybe only a small percentage of that is being recycled and the low value stuff is ending up being burnt or dumped into a river or in the ocean. So it's something that we really want to bring home as, although it is if we're looking at the distribution of where plastic pollution occurs into the environment, it may not feel like it's close to home here in the UK. Actually, the whole system's interlinked.
Yeah.
And if you're using plastic, then we are contributing to plastic pollution. It's that simple. So, here in the UK, we can make a big difference, not just on the consumption side, but on the reduction side and the awareness piece as well.
Yeah, and that's probably a good kind of segue into 7 Clean Seas, the name. It comes from, it's the 7 most, you probably explain it better than me.
Yeah, so there's a couple of meanings. So one of them, because we kind of came up with the name because in the early days we realized that, the earliest ever scriptures of all the oceans in the world was the 7 seas. It's been all the historic civilizations have used the same term. It's represented different things, and now it's kind of like the 7 seas is what a sailor would go and sail the 7 seas around the world. But for us, at 7 Clean Seas, obviously we want the seas to be as clean as they were back in those days, like have 7 clean seas again. But also, we want to tackle the 7 most plastic polluted countries in the world. And there is, unfortunately, a very uneven distribution. I'm going to try my best and go in order here, but it's China, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. So you've got 6 of them in Southeast Asia and 1 in South Asia. So for us, it's, although we could operate in Europe, we would be able to create very little impact in comparison to going to where the issue is prolific.
Yeah.
And trying to help there and trying to generate funding that they need to try and tackle the problem.
Yeah, and I guess it's part of the reason why the issue is so centered there or so great there is down to stuff like education and infrastructure, which I will kind of get into. But I remember, I think probably our first, with like introduction Zoom meeting, and there were certain things that kind of really stood out to me from like a statistics point of view, like the whole, I've got them noted down here. It's probably better coming from you, but 11 million tons of plastic dumped into the ocean every year.
Yeah.
And then the forecast by 2040, what was it?
Yeah, so by 2040, which now bear in mind we're over a quarter of the way into 2022. So we're talking 17 and a bit years.
Yeah.
It's going to almost triple to 29 million metric tons. Now, if you were to plot that on a graph, it's an exponential curve and not in the right direction. It's an exponential curve on the way up. Population's rising, middle class is rising, which is a good thing. Therefore, access to plastic is increasing. And it's just an inevitability of the system that we're living in. So we know that there's going to be more plastic. We know it's going to be consumed more. And we know the leakage is going to be higher under business as usual. So what we're here to say is, look, with other organizations in this space, is that business as usual is not acceptable. We won't live in a world that you want to live in. if we just keep going down this road. So let's pull up our socks and, you know, do our best and do our bit, each and every one of us, whether we're a person or a brand, to do something that's a positive step in the right direction.
Yeah, and that 29 tons equates to 50 kilos of plastic per meter of coastline globally.
Globally, every single year. Now, for the listeners, I cannot even explain to you how big 50 kilograms of plastic is. Like, just go home and pick up a PET bottle, for example. Your modern day PET bottle is weighing 10 grams.
It's thousands of those per meter.
Honestly.
I remember that was one of the things that stood out to me, and that is hopefully a really good way to illustrate the scale of you know, obviously what the problem is, and then obviously what you guys are trying to tackle. And then, you know, I guess there's a long-term goal for you guys. There's a figure in mind, isn't there? And there's what you've done today, which is amazing. So what's the long term? What's that number?
So I mean, to get to, like, from where we are to where we're going, we've done over 400,000 kilos of plastic already. That is whilst hiring 50 people who were in need of jobs from the areas that we're cleaning, which is like marine protected areas, so areas of high ecological significance. So not just helping the environment, but we're helping the communities and the people there as well. Have proper jobs on fair wages with pensions and all of the things we take for granted actually in the UK, for example. But our goals really are twofold. First of all, you know, we will not be satisfied until there is not plastic in the ocean. And, you know, that is a bold and audacious stance to take, because, like, the problem's so big. We may never you know, get there. If we do get there, then we'll go out of business, thank God. I'll be the happiest bum in the world.
You can retire
happy, yeah, even if I'm on a park bench, I don't care. Like, I've got what I wanted. But in between that now and then, we set ourselves a goal by 2025 to remove 10 million kilos of plastic.
Which is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's mad. It's
and then I think, talking to you off camera, I think that's definitely an achievable goal.
Yeah,
things are going.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you think about where, like, the exponential growth we've experienced, and mainly because of people like Salt, you know, being able to tie up with great brands and great partners. We've got partners all over the world. They are bringing in funding that we can pump straight into projects that's going to make an impact. So actually, that 10 million kilos, when we made it, we were looking at each other like, it's a bit of a stretch to now be like, oh, maybe we weren't ambitious enough, or maybe we need to revise this and you know, go bigger.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, just the rate of pace at which you moved, you know, it was kind of 2018, I guess, was inception and launch. We've had a couple of rocky years. We won't mention that, the C word. But yeah, it just seems like you're going from strength to strength. And obviously some amazing partnerships and some amazing projects, which I do want to delve into.
For sure.
But one of the things, again, that I really enjoyed, or still enjoy talking to you about, is the ways in which you work.
Yeah.
And there's 3 key ways.
Yeah.
If you want to.
So absolutely. So I think the first thing that I just want to get across is that we want to be a holistic solution provider for our partners. So we want our partners to walk away and not have just given money to clean the oceans. We want them to walk away with value that is beneficial to them, their goals in sustainability, and just their overall objectives. Now, everything we do links to ocean cleanup, removing plastic out of the ocean, and that's just a given. So I don't even need to go there when we're really looking at this. And the key for us is taking a step back. How do we, if we want to fix ocean plastic pollution or the biodiversity crisis or the global climate crisis, you know, one way is through donations, and it's a bit tumultuous when the C word you get for 2 years. You know, you can't really rely on these things, and philanthropic money will never be at the scale you need to fix these really existential issues that humanity is facing. And we're of the belief that you need a market mechanism. You need to find a way to tell people who are living in coastal communities in Sri Lanka or Latin America or Africa or Southeast Asia that they can make money from cleaning the oceans. So how do we create this mechanism that generates money from a positive action? So instead of like being a big beverage company, a soft drinks company who is producing a shed ton of bottles with red lids on them, and no one really minding, but they're making profit. We use the same economics, the same capitalist structure to, instead of produce a product, to remove a product out of the natural environment. And that led us to our business model, which is really the 3 core pillars that you mentioned. So the first is working with organizations to help them measure, because if you can't measure, you can't reduce, you can't improve. So how much plastic are you using? What is your supply chain? How are you distributing it? Where's it going in the world? What are the materials you're using? And how do we then take all of that data, put it into a report, and look at our next pillar, which is really reduction? Because before we even think about cleaning the oceans, we need to be doing something on reducing the amount of plastic being consumed. We want to turn the tap off whilst mopping up the floor. Most people are saying, don't mop up the floor while you turn the tap off. Dude, we can do both. Come on, the world's big enough. So measure and reduce, super important. Upstream intervention, it's turning the tap off. And then what we're focusing on is that mopping up the floor. How do we remove the plastic already in the ocean? Because we're looking at hundreds of millions of tons already. It's scary, the amount of plastic already there. And we can't just leave it and forget about it. So that's really when we allow the companies who have measured and reduced to say, okay, well, our plastic footprint is 100 tons this year. Next year, hopefully 90 tons, and the following year, 80 tons, because we're making progress on reductions, because it's not an instant fix. And then they say to us, look, Tom, I want to be plastic neutral. That is a benefit to me and my sustainability goals and journey, but it's obviously a huge benefit to you, because I will pay you to go remove 100 tons of plastic from the ocean to compensate for my 100 tons that I'm using. So they are winning as an organization. They're getting the funding they want. I'm massively winning because they're getting the sustainability goals and alignment that they want. We're massively winning because we're getting the funding that we are so desperately in need of. Our capacity is capped with funding, nothing else, not imagination. I assure you that. But then the communities which we go and build these projects, sorry. Whew, it's not COVID, I promise. But the communities in which we go and build these projects, they are the ultimate beneficiaries, because where they don't necessarily have the money to go and build that infrastructure themselves, their municipalities just don't. It's a fact of life. We can come in there with external funding and say, okay, let's clean up your marine environment. Let's also go to indigenous communities on the coast and build waste management systems. If that is simply a bin man coming around and collecting it and educating you about not throwing material into the environment, then so be it. So it's a real holistic solution that we're trying to go after.
Yeah, I guess it's completely end to end, isn't it? I know you're saying from the measure side of things, you've got some big partners. I think you mentioned The Economist.
Yes.
And from a measurement point of view, and just looking at their how a business operates, you can say, right, this is where you're at. Right, there's some really easy or low-hanging fruit here. Fix this. Right, you've reduced already.
Exactly.
And then from the project side of things, because part of the issue is that in some of these communities, waste has always gone into rivers, which flow into oceans. That's a very natural way of life. But the kind of advent or the growth of plastic means that people are doing things they've always done, but with a completely different material, and the lack of a bin man, like you said, infrastructure, or even knowledge about that kind of thing is also, that's kind of a big driver behind
massively
the issue. So you're literally tackling it from all sides.
Just trying to be holistic. I think, if we just focus on one independently, we're forgetting the others. And I think that we live in a world where we can, and there's enough people out there that want to help us, whether it's businesses or philanthropic funds. The key is, and you hit the nail on the head there. It's not, people jump the gun and they will blame the communities or the countries that have the high leakage. They don't have access to the education we have access to. They don't have access to the infrastructure or the funding we have access to. We're so privileged to be in this system. And what we have to realize is actually we are the minority, and the vast majority of the world, geographically speaking, are in areas where they don't have access to the things that they need. Now, one thing people need to understand about plastics is that it's a super material. It is dirt cheap. It can be sterile. It can be flexible. It can be rigid. It can be porous. It can be watertight, airtight, literally you name it. If you put a few zeros on the value of it, it would be treated the same as carbon fiber or titanium or all of these other amazing materials. But it's just so abundant and so cheap that we use it in all of these applications. And the reality is it does make life a lot easier. You know, it brings clean drinking water accessible to everybody. It creates food preservation in areas where they don't necessarily have fridges. So when you see that there are communities all around the world without the infrastructure needed to handle plastic, but with a clear benefit from using plastic and it being a price point that they can afford, actually them consuming plastic is an inevitability.
Yeah.
And if they don't have the waste management infrastructure, then I'm sorry to say it, but plastic in the ocean is an inevitability. So if we want to fix that problem, actually let's try and look at this like I guess in depth and identify the areas of real concern. And that is the fact that when these people are using these products that they don't have the wealth to find sustainable alternatives to, that they need somewhere to put it. And if the funding's not there, then we have to find a way. And it's partnerships like this with SALT and partnerships like all of our other clients as well that allow us to be one of multiple different funding sources for projects like that.
Yeah, and you know, from our perspective, we see where you guys are, what you've done, and where you're going. And yeah, we're so lucky to have this kind of, develop this partnership through, I guess it's almost through a friendship outside of all this space. But yeah, I mean, some of the projects that you're working on are mind-blowing, or some of the partners, you know, you got people like Microsoft, right?
So, I mean, God, I don't even know where to. We used to it's difficult now because at first you've got one, then you've got two, and it's like this is like a dream, and you get to where we are today, and we get to reflect on some incredible partners. Obviously, this is a great partnership for us. It's going to be the biggest kind of creative partnership we've done, where we're linking a product which will be the hazy pale ale to physically removing plastic from the ocean. And that is something we want to explore more and more with other brands as well. But on the other side of it, we have clients like FIFA World Cup.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
in Qatar. It's like,
unreal.
How on earth are they linking to an ocean cleanup organization?
And the goal is to make that the first plastic neutral.
So there's never been a carbon neutral World Cup. And they are going to be the world's first carbon neutral World Cup. And then they were like, well, you're going to use a lot of plastic. Are there any solutions? And they found us. And then they were like, this is a great idea. Let's go all in. Let's be not just the world's first carbon neutral World Cup, but let's be the world's first plastic neutral World Cup. And what this means is that me and my team have already been on the ground during the Arab Cup, literally knee deep in waste, figuring out exactly what is the plastics that we're using, what can we eliminate, how do we reduce the plastic footprint, then how much is the plastic footprint going to be? And we're looking at hundreds of tons of plastic from the World Cup. It's an enormous amount of games, and for health and safety purposes, unfortunately, you don't have an alternative to plastic in stadiums and in that kind of arena. So we're going to take the estimation for the entire plastic footprint for the World Cup, and we're going to offset that by removing that same weight of plastic from the ocean in Indonesia. And of course, we'll do an adjustment at the end. But it's just a huge opportunity for us to show the world, literally on the world stage.
I mean, unreal.
It's like, we're not mad. Like, we can find a way to fund ocean cleanup at scale that isn't just through like incredible people giving their money to us because they believe in what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, unreal. And that's why it's so exciting for us. And then I think, like, personally, and definitely for us as a brand as well, we gravitated to you guys for a number of reasons. I think really kind of cool aspirational brand. I think the delivery of the message, obviously what you're trying to do is amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the delivery of it, and I speak from personal kind of point of view here, is it makes the issue feel accessible to me.
Yeah.
I can decipher it, I can get involved in it. And then a couple of things that we've spoken about back and forth over the last few months. One is necessary plastic.
Yep.
So, and you kind of mentioned it with the World Cup there, you can't get away from using plastic.
Fortunately not, yeah.
So that's considered necessary, and you can recognise that, and we can still offset that.
Yeah.
And the other one that really stood out to me was that it's a journey rather than a destination.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sustainability is obviously so key and current, and people genuinely care about it. But getting on that kind of the first rung on the ladder, the first step in that direction, the first, getting on the journey and not having to get to that destination point from day one makes it a lot more approachable, accessible, and I think it's going to bring more people into it. And I think that's why I gravitate towards you guys and why our partnership works so well.
Look, honestly, that's our goal. Like summed up in a statement. When we're talking about like our B2C world, like directly engaging with customers, we are a loud, Gen Z, in-your-face brand that just doesn't align with sustainability in its traditional sense. And that's not an accident, and it's not also a faux pas. It was deliberate, and the reason we wanted to do that was because if we are building a sustainability brand that attracts people who are already interested in sustainability, then what is the net gain? Like, what is the net gain if those people already cared? Like, what are we really, are we making them improve? And if we are, like, how marginal is it? For me, the win is taking your average punter off the street who doesn't really know anything about sustainability, hasn't had access to that level of information from various sources, and we say, okay, well, look, we're a fun brand, we're young, we're bright, we're in your face, we're loud, we're edgy, dare I say it. But by the way, we are also a sustainability brand, and we want to make the messaging accessible. We want it to we want to step away from sustainability being, I guess, a luxury for people who can afford it and people who have the fortunate experience of education within that space, or like parents that are into it, which is the vast majority of people are not, I think. So it's how do we make it accessible? And for me, it's like, let's look at pop culture, like what's in at the moment. Let's align, let's be loud, let's, make a noise, let's do events, let's necessarily do things that people in the NGO world think we might be a bit crazy for. But it's loud and it's in your face, and it makes a stink. And the biggest thing for us, is to do it in a way that is fun and cool and not preachy.
And you've absolutely nailed that.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense. Like, even down from, like, if I buy one of your teas, that is going to go some way to pulling plastic out of the ocean.
Absolutely.
But it's also, they look good, right?
Yeah,
or the bottles. Like, I love the bottles. Obviously, they're reusable. So, it stops you kind of purchasing PET bottles, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Branding spot on, and then it even says by purchasing this water bottle you've pulled
8 kilos.
8 kilos, which is a significant amount of plastic.
So it's a month's worth of your average person's plastic footprint. So the idea is, if you buy a bottle, please, first of all, a sustainable bottle is only sustainable if you needed it. So don't buy our bottle if you don't need it, because that's the most unsustainable thing you can do, because then you've got 2 bottles. What are you going to do? But the reality is, the average person uses 8 kilograms of plastic in a month. If they were going to buy a bottle, they can buy our bottle. That not just spreads the message of ocean conservation, but we will remove 8 kilograms of plastic from the ocean on your behalf, so you're plastic neutral for the month.
Yeah, which is awesome. And I guess that kind of is a good then point to focus more on the collaboration and what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So from our perspective, it helps us, or it enables us to have a significant impact through the proceeds of the sale of the beer will directly support pulling plastic from the oceans. Yeah. Which is amazing. And the figures that we're kind of looking at for a 12-month period is hopefully upwards of 40,000 kilos.
Which is enormous.
Yeah, and for us as a small, youngish, smallish brand that's growing, sustainability is always in our mindset. And then being able to do things like this that have that impact is amazing. Yeah. And then I think it works kind of vice versa as well. Hopefully, through our small platform or our platform, we can turn more eyes onto 7 Clean Seas and that kind of thing. So I think it's a really cool partnership both ways. And obviously it's centered around beer as well. Yeah, well, during COVID lockdown, I really got into homebrewing. I mean, just experimenting with the different hops and the different grains. I mean, I have a passion for that, like I have a passion for marine conservation. So for me, this partnership that we're doing was on a personal level and a professional level, like just a win-win. I think anytime there's a brand willing to get behind ocean conservation, I'm all ears. Now, you have a very specific
clientele and a big reach globally, like an enormous reach, and the vast majority of those people may not have be fully up to speed with sustainability. So for us, it's like, well, great, here is a plethora of people that we can get our messaging over to them in a non-preachy way, in a fun way, through a beer, through scanning a QR code on this label, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is a good beer, and oh shit, I didn't realize I'm helping clean the ocean, and by the way, here's some statistics, and maybe they'll walk away from that beer, being a little bit more, just a little bit more in tune with I guess sustainability. So it's it really is just in line with us on so ways, and it just comes back to not being preachy. Like, how do we access people when they're doing something that they love to do, and then they're receptive to the message?
Yeah, it's funny because, like I said it earlier on, I think we can draw a lot of parallels.
Yeah,
weirdly, between what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
We're big on making craft beer more accessible and bringing more people into the space and being very open.
Yeah,
and I think there's kind of some similarity with that whole not being preachy and not having the sustainability conversation closed.
Yeah.
And I've obviously seen that through various conversations that we've had. I've obviously learned a lot through it.
Yeah.
And really excited about this collaboration and this beer, hopefully sparking some conversation, because beer's centered around good times and conversation and people.
Yeah.
And hopefully, we can turn more people onto the issue or raise some awareness.
I'm sure we will. I mean, like you say, beer gets people down, it gets them talking. And if they're struggling for something to talk, scan the QR code, learn about sustainability, and chat about that.
Yeah, watch us just go back and forth.
Yeah. I
think I just want to touch on the necessary plastic side of things, because that's something that really hit home, because I look at our business and during the kind of last couple of years, we've been very heavily reliant on can, and we still are. And then for a business like ours, for various reasons, whether it's the pandemic or if it's Brexit or if it's a combination of absolutely everything that's going on in the world, we can't move to a printed can at the moment.
Yeah.
The suppliers just aren't taking on new contracts. So currently we, on the cans we've got here, we use, it is a plastic label.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. It's less than a gram of plastic, but it's still something we use. And we're looking into recycled substrates and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But where we are as a business, it is considered necessary, I guess.
Yeah. And it's such an important topic, right? Because necessary can mean many different things. Now, we're diving into the methodologies here a little bit, and I'll try and keep it fun. Unless you're a boffin in the crowd and you want to dive deep into it. But I mean, look, there's a few different ways to look at it. First of all, you've got technically necessary, which means that I physically need to use plastic because there isn't a technical alternative. We might be talking about meat, for example, that it's like, I think it's they flush it with a gas, and it's a special type of plastic that keeps the meat fresh. All sorts of food and beverage applications that actually need a plastic. So that is a technically necessary plastic. But then the biggest one that people struggle with is economically necessary plastic. And this means that, there is either a solution available, but we cannot exist as a profitable organization if we use that. Or it's a brand new solution that is very small scale, so it's super expensive at the moment, and you need it to scale up and hit economies of scale for it to become accessible from an economic perspective for the vast majority of products out there. So what we're falling into, I think, with yourselves is actually both simultaneously, which is strange. And the reality that we're using a plastic label with even a tiny amount of plastic on it basically puts us in a situation where we say, okay, well, we're doing it because technically there's no alternative, because they're not taking on new contracts, and the canning sizes have to be of X quantity to print directly on can. So that is a technical reason, but there's also probably an economic reason behind that, which is, as you're a medium-sized brewing organization and you're growing, if you want to do that on a smaller scale, it's going to cost an inhibitive amount of money potentially. And this is what I want everybody in sustainability to understand. And I know there are purists out there that will disagree with me fundamentally, but I am of the strong opinion that, look, we need to find ways to make this world sustainable. Whilst there are those in this world like myself who are like so passionate about sustainability, we would forego products for more sustainable options. But the vast majority of people just will not. It's a fact of life. And then when you layer on top of that people have to put food on the table, they've got to pay for staff, they've got all of these other requirements in life. We cannot expect people to not, in a capitalist society, want to build businesses and grow and make their lives better. So when you realize those two things exist and they're not going to go away, we have to say, take a long, hard look in the mirror and go, okay, well, if people are still going to build businesses and they're still going to want to fend for their families and earn more money and everything that goes hand in hand with that, and we want a sustainable world, then there by definition has to be compromise. Because if there's not compromise, then the only solution is to shut all the businesses down, and everybody loses in that scenario.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful message, because two kind of big takeaways from that is one, you can do things within your capability. So currently our capability is to package a can and put a label on it. And that kind of open message saying, for various reasons, it's considered necessary, but what you're doing is having a much greater impact than a much greater positive impact.
Yeah.
That will hopefully drive people to look into this or to take action.
Yeah.
And the other side of it as well that I've taken away is that kind of moving away from the purist view. It does make it more palatable. It makes it more accessible. And hopefully it means that more people can get involved in the space, and the net overall impact is a lot bigger. Whereas if you're either in or you're out, it's only ever going to be a smaller, more closed conversation.
You're completely right. There's a famous saying that I live and die by in sustainability, which is we don't need a few people being perfectly sustainable. We need everybody being a little bit sustainable. That's how you make enormous change. You're not going to achieve scale with 1% of the population being extremely sustainable. It's still only 1%. But if everybody is 10% sustainable, it's such a bigger impact, and it's the first step on that journey. The only caveat to the whole thing that I would say from a sustainability, from an environmentalist's perspective, is that all I want to see from organizations who understand that there are necessary plastic footprints, necessary carbon emissions, water consumption, all of the above, is that they are looking at a long-term sustainability strategy, and that they understand that, okay, it is a journey, it's a difficult journey, it's a long journey, but it's a journey that as long as there is a clear, defined, well thought out destination and some semblance of a plan of how we're going to get from here to there, then actually it's okay to say this is going to take us 10 years, this is going to take us 20 years. And if you look at all the big companies in the world, actually you'd see that their sustainability targets are 2030, 2040, 2050 even sometimes. Because the reality of it is that it's a transition. It's not a light switch.
That's a really good point. And then I think that it feeds into our partnership. So, like I said, there's a personal friendships that go back, and this is the first thing that we're doing together, launching this collaboration beer.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing.
No, absolutely not.
And the plan is that we do this with all our collaborations anyway. It's an ongoing relationship, but through that relationship, hopefully we will work together, and we'll move forward on that journey, and over time, look to become a more sustainable organisation as a whole.
Yeah.
So this is almost like the starting point.
No, for sure. It really is. And from our motivation, we look at the brewing industry and it's interesting, you've got massive amounts of packaging, you've got huge levels of resource usage, and you've got clear defined supply chains and distribution chains. So it's a perfect example of an industry that could be measuring all of its metrics and then trying to figure out ways, maybe even collectively as an industry, how to improve things.
Yeah, and it's tough, especially kind of on the smaller side of things.
Yeah.
And if you take into context, how the industry has been hit, obviously in recent years.
Oh, massively, yeah. But I was actually really impressed. Last time I was here, I saw all the grain being delivered in these huge plastic sacks, all polypropylene plastic sacks, extremely easy to recycle, all one color, all white, undyed. I mean, if you're going to use plastic in the UK, in our infrastructure that we have available, that's a great one to be using, because that will go back into the circular economy. It will be recycled. So it's just things like that. And one thing we would always aspire to do with a client is find, okay, well, are there any opportunities like that, but you're using a material that can't be recycled?
Yeah.
Then how do we substitute it? We might be substituting plastic for plastic, but it might be unrecyclable for recyclable given the geographic context.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think one of the things that we're discussing, and one of the things that we're going to do, is a bit of a plastic audit of the brewing process to see kind of where we are.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds from a kind of plastic usage point of view, and just to see, I mean, the company, the maltsters that we use, the hop companies that we use, they are big organisations, so I imagine they've kind of got a keen eye on sustainability.
Oh, for sure.
It'll be interesting to see that, and it's something that we're planning sharing as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's going to be quite a good process to go through.
It's going to be great, and this all started by just loving to sit down and drink a beer.
Yeah, and it ends in that way as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But, I guess for takeaways for people watching this, because you do span, but business to business and business to consumer.
Yeah.
Somebody that wants, has really kind of bought into the message or seen the impact of plastic pollution. Where's a starting point for a business, and where's a starting point for somebody at home, just a consumer?
I'd just say just start small. Find one metric that you want to improve and just work on it for, 6 months. The reality is, when you're choosing a more sustainable option, you're often choosing a slightly more inconvenient option as well. And that can be uncomfortable at first, but we're super dynamic humans, we adapt to this quite quickly. So like my water bottle, for example, I haven't used a single-use plastic water bottle in about 5 years. And at first it's difficult because you're just so used to having not having to carry this thing around with me, and not losing it as well is a big thing. Hence it's bright yellow. But then you get desensitized to it, becomes easy, and you get on with it. And once that becomes second nature, it's like, right, what next? Let's choose something else. Am I going to try and take more trains over more cars? Like if I need to go somewhere, can I get a train there? And it's like these little green steps of incremental change that you can make. That's mainly for consumers. And all I'd say for businesses is, look, it's great that you're even thinking about this. Just start with looking in the mirror. Be reflective, okay? Try and measure your footprint. How much plastic are you using? What plastic? How much carbon are you potentially emitting? How much water are you using? I don't know what your business is, but there will be all of these consumptions, and that's where you start. Because if you don't measure it, how can you track your performance? You want to be able to look back in a year and be like, holy shit, like we removed 80% of our problematic materials in our packaging. And you'll only know that because you'll be able to have a comparison between the two.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to just touch on the consumer side of things. I'm going to put a cheeky product plug in there.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Because we obviously discussed, as a consumer, the little steps can be, they're different, or they might be slightly awkward. But in regards to what we've made and what we've brewed, there's no trade down. It's a delicious pint. It's a great can. But people drinking it are having an impact.
Yeah.
It's the line that we've been using, but every can sold or every pint drank goes directly to supporting plastic being removed from the oceans.
Directly. Yeah, absolutely directly. And I had the opportunity to try it when it was first ready out of the fermenters. Cold, naturally carbonated, probably not carbonated as much as it should be, and it tasted fantastic. Like for me, I mean, I love craft anyway, but I certainly know that my friends that are not necessarily craft beer drinkers are going to want to and are going to enjoy drinking it. It's super light, super citrusy. It's not too bitter. It's kind of like it's like a good summer session beer if you're in a beer garden.
Yeah, for sure. It's a kind of classic salt character, isn't it?
Yeah.
We used New Zealand and Australian hops, kind of links in where you guys are based. But yeah, super excited to launch it for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You'll literally be able to go and buy a beer, finish it, put it down, and think I've just contributed towards cleaning the oceans.
And I guess what we'll get to as well is we'll be able to share kind of the milestones with where we get from
Absolutely.
a plastic reduction point of view as well over time. Yeah. So that figure of 40,000 kilos, I genuinely think that we'll exceed it, and I hope we do.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing we'll be able to share that as we go through this journey.
And we should do as well. I mean, as an organisation, we have more projects popping up all the time, and one thing we want to do is make a much bigger song and dance about it this year. We want people to see what we're doing and get excited about it, and particularly our partners, because those projects fundamentally wouldn't exist if it wasn't for partnerships like Salt. And obviously through that, the consumers that are buying the beer, the final straw, and enjoying it with their friends. So it's you feel a million miles away from the issue, I think, when you're sat down in a pub having a beer.
Yeah.
But you couldn't be closer to it if you're choosing this option.
Yeah, for sure. I think we'll film an episode 2.
Yeah,
but I'll come to you about it. But yeah, I mean, hopefully people stuck around and watched this, because I think the story's amazing. This will be on a landing page where I want people to do kind of a bit more of a deep dive in 7 Clean Seas, get under the skin of the problem, hopefully donate, shop the merch, all that stuff, because it does go a long way. Is there anything that you want to leave the viewers with?
All I'd say is, like, look, every little bit helps. Don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect. No one's perfect. Just try to make a little bit of change in the direction of sustainability in your life, and it will add up. But most importantly, get out there and do it in a fun environment and in a fun way that makes other people around you want to associate with it. And if that fun way is sitting down and cracking open a ice cold pale ale in the beer garden, then so be it. If that's the way it's got to be done. I know I'll certainly be doing that. So all I'd say is just we're pumped. We're pumped for this partnership, and I'm sure it's the start of amazing things.
100%. I think that's a wrap.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming, mate.